The wrangling and horse trading continued up to the last moment as parties jockeyed for ministerial posts and other concessions. The government that emerged is extremely broad-based. In fact, it includes almost all of Iraq's various factions and ethnic groups, and groups that are in the government are less likely to take up arms against it.
I think it's positive in the sense that there is all groups are behind the government in that sense. I think that really isolates Al-Qaeda, it isolates the terrorist organizations.
But there is a trade-off. In order to give seats to all of Iraq's parties, the new government contains 44 ministers. With that many, analysts say, the government will be unable to take any decisive actions.
The new Iraqi government is going to be a bit dysfunctional. It always looks good on paper to have as broad a coalition as possible, but when it comes to actually getting things done, it's a recipe for dysfunction.
And why is that?
The reason why it's a recipe for dysfunction is because the prime minister is going to have trouble pushing forward any agenda because every minister is going to be acting almost as a prime minister in his or her own right, and not really pay attention to any government agenda. That's the problem. The various ministers are going to be answering to different political parties, not to the government itself.
In Iraq's inconclusive elections 9 months ago, Prime Minister Nuri al-Maliki's Shiite bloc came in second. But during months of negotiations, Mr. al-Maliki outmaneuvered his rivals to remain Prime Minister in the new government. Former Prime Minister Iyad Allawi, who heads a secular Sunni-backed bloc that actually won more votes, finally gave up his claim to head a new government and agreed to join the new coalition as a senior minister. The party of the anti-American cleric, Muqtada al-Sadr, has also joined. Now a major challenge is to get the economy going and to adopt a new law clarifying how the Kurds and the central government will share control over the country's huge oil and gas reserves.
The country is stagnant. Oil production has not increased. It's still below what it was in the last period of Saddam Hussein. So there are a lot of economic issues. Electricity has to be produced. The services have to be restored. Jobs have to be created. In addition, still on the economic front, the problem has to be solved about the hydrocarbon law. Who has the right to sign contracts?
The other big challenge is security. Violence is down, but Baghdad and other parts of the country are still unsafe.
The security situation in Iraq is spotty. Certainly the security situation is better in the Kurdish areas in the north, and it's also good in the predominantly Shia areas around Basra, Najaf, Nasiriyah, and so forth. Baghdad itself is problematic. Last week I drove through Baghdad, the streets of Baghdad, in an Iraqi army Humvee at midnight, and going from neighborhood to neighborhood was certainly spotty. I wouldn't want to do it on my own, nor would many Iraqis. The big question with security is whether the Iraqis are going to be successful in dealing with their militia problem. The Peshmerga are a problem in the north, the Kurdish army, if you will, and the Badr Corps and the Jaish al-Mahdi, the Shia militias, remain a problem in Baghdad and the south. If the Iraqis aren't able to successfully reintegrate control over these militias, it does not bode well for the future.
The new government must also deal with its powerful neighbor, Iran. Analysts say many Iraqi politicians, not only Sunnis but Shiites too, are keen to carve out an independent space for Iraq by playing off Iran against the oil-rich Gulf states.
Iran's influence is certainly ever-present. Some of the influence is malicious, some of the influence is just by nature of being a neighbor. Now, it would be a mistake to say that the Iraqi Shia are just Iranian puppets. Look, when the United States invaded Iraq, we underestimated the psychological impact of occupation upon the Iraqis and upon the Arab world. The Iranians have consistently underestimated the psychological impact of Iraqi nationalism.
As the new government struggles to improve security and attract foreign investors, it knows it is, in a sense, under the gun. America officially ended its combat operations last summer. U.S. troops are scheduled to leave completely by the end of the coming year. Analysts say the fact that Iraq's new government includes almost every faction and ethnic group reduces the risk of fighting in the future. However, they add that the government coalition is too broad to be able to carry out any clear policies. The government will not have long to prove itself. American troops are scheduled to leave Iraq by the end of 2011. For Political Agenda, this is Burton Bollag in Washington.